A couple months ago, we attempted to update the designs of our original characters as avatars for ourselves for this project. Shortly after doing the redesign, we thought we'd try it in a couple different styles. I did one of Ember, and then, because I'm a completionist, I decided I had to do Luna as well. But I got stuck and couldn't really finish it, and I really loved the way that you had done the texture on your most recent revision. I thought it would be better, instead of trying to complete it on my own, to have you help me.
So Luna was a character that I made up to go with your character, who was your DeviantArt avatar.
That's what he started as.
Luna started out as Ember's counterpart because I needed an OC to go with Ember. So you made Ember first. What made you decide to join DeviantArt with the name Ember Reed? Was it just a name that you liked?
So when I was in high school, I was into all sorts of different things.
Like lighting things on fire?
Like lighting things on fire. But that's not really relevant to where the name Ember came from. I just really liked that name. It was one of several names for characters that I had come up with based on elements. Not characters, but just names. But ultimately, the one of those names that I liked the most was Ember. And then Reed, of course, came from... And again, you're going to think this is really stupid, but at the very beginning, I knew I wanted to make him a wizard, and the only wizard that I can think of that I liked in any way, shape, or form was Clowreed from Card Captors. So the name doesn't really mean much. I thought Ember sounded cool, and Reed was just a neat last name that I always associated with mystery because of the character Clowreed from Card Captors. Later on, I reinterpreted the meaning of Ember, the character, as being sort of a catalyst for change. You know, embers don't really burn very strongly, and they don't really start fires on their own, but they can get a whole bunch of things around them to start being on fire. And that being, I guess, a guidepost for how I wanted the character to behave and act and the kind of stories that I wanted him to be involved in.
If you put an ember near a dry reed, a plant, it will probably start a fire.
Exactly.
There's layers.
And there are layers. He used to just be just a weird-looking dude, kind of looked like a cross between Gandalf and Spider-Man.
And a Final Fantasy Black Mage a little bit.
A lot bit.
A lot bit?
A lot bit.
And now I'm just thinking of Ian McKellen in a skin-tight suit. I could go there, but probably shouldn't.
No, just picture Spider-Man with a wizard hat. The one thing about Ember that has not changed in all this time is that he still obscures his face. It's harder for you to know what he's thinking because you can't really...
He doesn't really have a lot of readable expressions.
Exactly.
So Luna actually started out as Lily Reed. That was her original name. And I honestly don't know why I ever called her Lily. I kind of just pulled it out of my butt. Really, Luna makes more sense because she always had those Luna moth wings, right? Like she never didn't have them, and so
right.
Luna was kind of like the
But
obvious.
Also, your username was Stitched Moon.
Yeah, that's true.
Which I'm more curious where that came from.
Oh, gosh. I tell this story a lot because it has been my username on a lot of platforms. But basically, when I was an edgy teenager and I was trying really, really hard to be a goth.
Edgy.
But, I was like
I can't even picture you being goth.
Imagine a nerd trying to be goth.
I can imagine that because that's what every goth is.
Yeah, but there's another layer. A nerd pretending to be a nerd, pretending to be goth. Like that layer. It's meta. I was trying that hard. But... So I went through this Tim Burton-y Hot Topic phase where I was just drawing everything with stitches in it, like it was sewn together. Like it didn't even make sense. I just draw stitches and everything because I thought it looked cool and edgy. So for a while I started drawing the moon, like a round pillow with patches sewn on. Like the craters were just circular patches.
You know what I really like? The fact that that's still incorporated into Luna's design.
Yeah, yes it is. Anyway, so in the beginning she was just supposed to be like a pack rat kind of fairy, like a magpie who just went around collecting things that people lost. Like when I was a kid, I used to pick up random things off the ground. Ariel in The Little Mermaid, how she had a whole room full of other people's junk? That was me. I've always been a little bit fascinated with things that other people have lost or dropped or forgotten. Things that are just sort of broken and left behind. Found objects. That's what the word I was looking for. Found objects. Luna is the patron of found objects.
It's like the fantasy equivalent of a hoarder.
Yeah. When you put it that way, yeah. Basically. Yeah, I know the moth fairy thing isn't terribly original, but I really like Luna moths. I like moths in general.
Well, that wasn't really her true form, just one that she chooses more often than not.
Yeah, she doesn't really have a fixed form. She just just likes moths. And also dogs. So you should talk about Ember's backstory.
I got this a little bit from a D&D game that we played, where I actually tried to roleplay as Ember, which was interesting because the original incarnation of Ember couldn't speak. On the character creation sheet, I had to come up with some sort of race for him to be, and I didn't really know what to make him. So I found out about this character class that are kind of like elementals. I kind of played with that idea a little bit, but then I thought it would be interesting if Ember had an inner conflict or contradiction about him and
Yeah.
decided to stitch that into his actual being, I guess you could say, by making him an elemental hybrid. It's an unstable combination in that Ember has these elemental parts of himself because he can summon fire at any time, and there are parts of his body that are basically made of fire. But at the same time, it has to coexist with this very real, very squishy, organic body that doesn't like to be on fire. And so his existence is kind of a conflict. He's been alone pretty much since birth. He kind of wanders around, not really having a place to belong to. Since he finds that any place with people, they tend to be either afraid of him or treat him like an outsider, because he always is, no matter where he goes, because there's no one else like him. So he actually spends most of his time in solitude, in the forests. At some point, he happens upon this ancient library. After he finds this place, he sort of makes it his home and decides that he's going to spend his life defending it. So he basically lives inside of this forest with this buried temple full of ancient knowledge. Spends all of his time reading and studying, not just the books of the library, but the forest itself, the living things that also call that place their home. So he kind of treats the forest itself as his family. And he's basically like the fantasy world equivalent of a conservationist. And when he's not protecting the forest, he's studying the forest, learning more about it, learning about the things that live there. Learning is very central to the character.
Yes, he seems like a scholarly type.
He is very scholarly.
So Luna is someone that Ember meets while he's living in the forest. She's sort of regarded as a forest spirit, like a nature spirit, kind of just chilling there.
Before they meet, she spends a lot of time observing him.
Yeah. She collects random things that people lose and drop when they're in the forest, and she can shapeshift into animals or pretty much anything she wants. She actually kind of has a more complicated origin, but she doesn't really remember it very well.
Well, she doesn't know who she is.
Yeah.
She thinks she knows.
Yeah, but she doesn't
But
remember.
She's been around for so long that she actually forgets where she's from. Spoilers, Luna is probably much, much older
Yeah.
than Ember. They're both very old. Ember, because he's part elemental and because he figured out a way to not light himself on fire, has been living for probably hundreds of years.
Yeah, Luna's probably like a couple thousand years old. She kind of has a lot of knowledge and information stored up, and she kind of exists in connection with the old ruined library, but she doesn't remember what her purpose was, other than she's there to archive things. She just doesn't really remember what she's supposed to be archiving,
Wow.
so she just collects junk.
She treats it more like hoarding now.
Yeah, which is...
Probably doesn't realize that it's for the sake of archival.
Yeah, no, she doesn't remember that. She just like, gotta keep things, gotta save things.
Gotta do a hoard. Gotta do a hoard.
Yeah, basically. That's how my brain works, actually.
Yes, I know.
I don't know. Was that interesting enough? Did we say enough interesting
How the
things?
f- am I supposed to know?
I'll edit it into something. I'll fix it in post.
Stop saying that.
I'll fix it in post.